VLOOKUP can be extremely frustrating and complicated if you don't do it exactly right. And we're going to go through it step by step, and we're going to take a look at this example that I did with my class. And maybe this video will help you figure out how to do VLOOKUP for yourself. So, super simple. Basically, as you know, I sell robots, and this is my robot customer list. I sold robots to Peter Parker, Tony Stark, George Jetson, Bono, George Foreman, and just imagine this list went on for 10,000 more customers way, way down here. And it's basically for everybody, I have the customer name, the region, and the amount of money that they spent on robots. Okay? So when I want to find one particular customer, when I want to look up somebody, like their phone number, for example, it could take me a really long time to scroll through this list, right? And my boss, who's incredibly lazy, told me, Sydney, all I want you to do is make me this one simple square box. I just want to go in here, type in number 1, and as soon as I do, the person's name, region, and amount is going to pop up. And I'm like, sweet, I know how to do that. We can do that with VLOOKUP, okay? Now, VLOOKUP, what it does is, the data could be anywhere on the page. So we could be looking just at these two columns. We could be looking at these two columns. But whatever is on the leftmost part of our selection, which in this case is going to be order number, this is what we're going to find it by. And you've already experienced this a whole bunch of times. If you go to the gym and they say, what's your membership number? They're looking up that number that links everything else on the row, your name, address, phone number, social insurance card, etc. together. Okay, so even though the data is stored in what looks like a table, we're able to pull it off of that row and make it into a different format. Basically, that's what VLOOKUP does. So anytime you call somebody and they ask you for that identifying piece of information, your student number, your phone number, etc., they're basically doing a kind of VLOOKUP, that you're going and grabbing information from one side, the number to look up, and you're doing something else on it. And we're going to learn how to do that right now. So the boss said that I basically put in a number 1, and right here it's going to say Peter Parker North and $52,000, right? So let's see how we get that done. Now, I'll show you the simple way first, and then I'll show you something a little more complicated that we cover in the last page of Module 3, right? And you could use this for all the examples that you have in the homework for this module, including the soybean table and so on. Ours has 4 columns, but it can have any number of columns, and it could also be arbitrary. Even though the lookup column has to be on the leftmost side, it doesn't have to be on the leftmost side of the sheet. It could actually be sitting in the center, right? So we could decide where our table is going to be. So let's get it started. To put up the name, I'm going to write equals VLOOKUP. Okay, as soon as I type that in, it's going to tell me it looks for a value in the leftmost column of the table and returns a value on the column that you specify. Okay, so first thing we have to put in is the lookup value. We're going to grab this square right here, meaning go to J5, look what's in there, and then match it to somewhere. Okay, next we have to say where's the table that we're looking for, and this is going to be our table. Okay, we're going to go from A2 to D7, and everything in between, sorry, A3 to D7. Everything in between A3 and D7 could be looked up in our table. Okay, so you'll notice that we started off, our first column is what we're looking to match to, and everything else is arbitrary. Just depends how much data we want to grab. The VLOOKUP table could be really big or really small, not dependent on what's on the sheet. Okay, so we have table array. Next, we want column index number. This is super simple. This becomes column 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if we want name, that means column 2, 1, 2. So we're going to type in a 2, and that's it. Okay. We hit enter, and we're going to get an NA, which for now is okay, and we'll fix it later. Okay, next let's do the same thing for region. Equals VLOOKUP. Okay, now you also know that if you go into formulas, we can click on insert function and get pretty much the same thing, but in a graphical lookup. We're going to do the same thing here. And the cool thing about this is that it will explain to you at each step what it's doing. So first thing, lookup value, where are we going to go to get our answer? It's going to be the order ID. Next, we want the table array. Where's our data being stored? We're going to grab the same box, hit enter. Then we're going to do column index number. What is the column index number for region? Number 3, right? We have 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to pick number 3 right there. And the rest of it doesn't matter for right now, but it will be important in a second, and hit OK. Right? Finally, we'll do it for a third time. VLOOKUP. Okay, we're going to say lookup value J5 as usual. Where is our table data coming from? Let's grab it. And what column do we need for amount? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Drop in number 4. Okay? We hit enter, and let's see if it works. Basically, I go up to my square, I type in 1, it pulls in everybody's information. The amount just got cut off because we have to increase the size of the column, but now that we do, it's working perfectly. If I change it to 2, 3, 4, we're good to go. Okay? So basically, if the number is between 1 and 5, it will go and look it up. Just like, for example, if that was a phone number, it would go and look it up. Now here's the problem. When we don't have anything entered in, when I first turn on the sheet, it says NA because there's nothing in the box, right? So how do we fix that? We get rid of the order ID number, and let's take a look at the example from the textbook. We use a nested statement, so we basically have one formula inside another, and I'm going to type in equals if, okay? And if is a logical statement, it will check if something's true or not. So it says if J5 equals nothing, that's going to be our logical statement, then do nothing. Otherwise, and then, like basically if something is in the box, then let's do Vlookup. Okay, so we do the same thing we did before. Vlookup, we stick in a bracket, we're going to specify J5 as our cell, right, to look up. The table array is going to be our table right here. Column index number for amount is going to be number 4 like we talked about, and I'm going to hit enter. I might want to add a second bracket at the end just so it's nicely nested, right? Because you'll notice I now have 2 sets of brackets, one inside the other. I hit enter, and look at that. It's nothing. It's just blank. I'm going to copy this formula up. I'm going to double check them to make sure they didn't jump around. They did. So I'm just going to adjust these guys a little bit just to make sure that they're in the right spot. Now, for region, I want 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to change my lookup column to a 3. Okay, and let's take a look at name. Name is going to be number 2, and of course that jumped around as well. So I could either just highlight this and then redo my, that looks good, the range is awesome. Okay, so now when I go in here and I type in 1, that almost worked. Let's see what else changed. Aha, we should have used dollar signs because now our number that has J5, our first number, we don't want that to ever change. It's always going to be the same, right? So let's add in some dollar signs for J5, and the truth is we could add in dollar signs, whoops, here as well, okay? Because our lookup box is never going to change either. Now we should be good because the only number that's going to change is going to be our lookup column. So let's drag those in, and we'll change this 4 to region is going to be number 3, and name is going to be number 2, okay, because it's the second column, and we're good to go. Okay, so now I have no numbers, nothing shows up. I put in a 1, boom, I get everything, 2, etc. Boss leaves, back to 0, we're good to go. Okay, so that's using a nested if statement, one inside the other. Okay, and basically all we do is we go from one column to the next. So you'll see in the text there's an example that says you have to match M070, and the answer is 1930. All they're asking you to do is design a VLOOKUP table to look for one and the other. So let's say we have in our other box on the other side of the page M070. Okay, so what we would do is type in something like this, VLOOKUP. Okay, lookup value, we know what it is. It's this one right here. Okay, what's our table array? It'll be this one. What column do we want it to bring back? Number 2. Hit enter, and there we go. It brings back 1930. And what it does is it will go on the left-hand side, read in the table. It's only two columns in this case, and it will grab whatever we tell it is in the second column. Okay, so now imagine if you had a whole bunch of other data on this, it would just go across as many columns as you told it and grab it out. The alternative to this, or basically the reverse, is HLOOKUP, which works the exact same way but opposite, up and down, instead of going side to side. Don't worry about that for now because that's a little more complicated, but this is an excellent place to start. Okay, so that's how you do VLOOKUP. Super, super simple, right? If you just follow these steps exactly. Okay, but we have one last problem. And that is if you do everything I just said and you design the VLOOKUP properly when you're on the second page in the homework, you're going to have a problem that it's going to pick the wrong date for harvesting based on the GCC, the GGC, whatever, the soybean thing. Assuming you did it right, it's not going to know which date to stop at because you want it to stop at the first day that it's ready to harvest, not the last date. Okay? So the way to fix that is by our missing formula. So let's go back into insert function, and you'll notice that in the fourth box, it says range lookup, true or false. So false means if it's an exact match, stop working. True means try to find a close match. Okay? So depending on what we're looking up, we're talking about the M070 and the date. So in this case, if you go into and do a VLOOKUP, when you're looking at the dates, we're basically just trying to go through and find the right number. And as soon as we do, what date is next to it? That's what the VLOOKUP table is. So in this case, I would put in false, right? Meaning stop as soon as you find the right answer. In our case, boom, it went across and found 1930. But when it's going through all those dates and you have some of them that say ready and some of them that say not ready, you would want to make sure that you have false in there so it stops at the right spot. Okay, I hope this gave you an idea of how to do VLOOKUP. And if it's not a problem, let's go take a look at that sheet for 1 second. Okay, so a lot of people had problems with this in my class. So I'm just going to show you what we did. Basically, if you look at the formula we put in here, we said VLOOKUP B8. Okay, so B8 is our maturity group. Go to column 2 and bring back 1930, like we talked about before. That basically goes to this column. It goes to M070, looks across and grabs whatever's next to it, right? Just wait glue into it. In this case, it's easy because there's only 2 columns in the entire table. So let's take a look at it in big. Here we could look up, I'm sorry, wrong one. This one grabs this table, finds M070, and grabs whatever's next to it. In our case, that's 1930. Now, estimated harvest date, for this one, we do VLOOKUP for column I and column J. That's the only thing that's in the VLOOKUP, okay? What we're looking for is the lookup value is ready. So whenever it says ready, then stop, okay? And we put that false at the end, like we learned about before, to make sure that's happened. So what does VLOOKUP do? It starts off here, and it looks next to it. It starts off here and looks next to it. It's trying to match ready, and it will grab whatever's next to it. When we get all the way down to the bottom, it will find ready, but then if you don't put false in, it will go down to the last one and report 8/31/2017. But if you do put false in, it will stop at the first one because it exactly matches. And then it will give you this date, 8/15/2017. Okay, so it's important when you're putting it together to make sure that your formula, it accounts for, and we'll look at it right here, right? Let's just go into formulas, insert function. We're looking for ready. Make sure it's in quotes, otherwise it's not going to work because it's a text string. Where's our table? It's basically all of column I and J, although you could select those exact cells if you wanted to. We want the second column because we want it to go from cumulative GDD and jump over to harvest, cancel that. We want it to go from harvest ready over to date when it finds the right date. And range lookup is false because we want it to grab it by the first date when it says ready, not the last. Okay, I hope that helps you with VLOOKUP, incredibly powerful tool. And once you get the hang of making some simple tables, it could be really easy and fun to use. It's a really, really simple way to do it, just like we have our order sheet now, and we could pull things in. Think about the things you can do with this, like create an invoice that you could grab all the information from a row, and then depending on where the information is, pull in the person's name, and email address, and billing address, and so on. Have a good one.